I was just doing a bit of admin, and I wouldn't normally shoot something like this, but I thought, well, why not? Because, well, there's a thing that I'm going to be getting rid of, and I won't have it again, so I thought I might as well capture it on video before it goes. What's happened is I got an email from Anders Enger Jensen. You might remember he's the chap who does the music, Retro Grooves Volume 1, 2 and 3, the music for the Planet X3 soundtrack, various other things as well. And in the past he's sent me cassettes and mini-discs that I've featured on this channel. Anyway, he got in touch, and he said that he was sending over a set of his music to a chap here in the UK on cassette, but unfortunately this chap's cassette player had chewed up some cassettes in the past, and he wondered if I've got a spare machine that I could send to him, and it's sort of a bit of a charitable type of thing. I thought, well, why not? Because I'm sure I've got a spare cassette player somewhere. This chap isn't going to be interested in recording cassettes, just playing them back. So I had to think, what could I send him? I mean, most of the things I've got are pretty bulky, and most of the cassette players I've got are ones that I bought for a reason, because I wanted that specific device. But I remember I do have one that I think is in the attic, that is a very compact unit. It's still in its box, so that's perfect, because I could just put a bit of tape over it and send it off without having to repackage everything. And with it being small, it'll be easy to send through the post. And it's not one I'm attached to. I bought it, I think it was because it was a low price, and I was kind of intrigued with the loading mechanism, but as it was, I never ended up using it. So let me see if I can find it, and I just want to show it to you here, and hopefully we can see if it's working. And I'll have a look inside perhaps just to check everything's all right with it, give it a good clean, and then we can wrap it up and I'll send it off to this chap, and he can have a bit of an early Christmas present. But yeah, let me see if I can find it. I think I know where it is. Right, well, here it is. I still haven't had a look inside this yet. It seems to be leaving marks on the counter. I think the reason I got this is because I had an idea about doing something about what's the cheapest cassette player you can get that's going to be half decent. And I picked a couple of very cheap ones up, but I never ended up making that video. Maybe one day I will, but it'd be a shame just to post this off and never have a look at it myself. I've never even plugged this in. So this is the Sony TC-TX333. As you can see, it's part of, or it was originally, I believe, part of a microsystem, or maybe an optional component of a microsystem. You know, you might have got a CD and a radio, and if you wanted, you could add the cassette in to the system. So anyway, let's have a look at it, and hopefully this thing works, and then we can just take this box down, stick a label on it, and post it off. I don't think it's a particularly valuable thing, but being from Sony and of a certain age, it should play a cassette quite reasonably, I would have thought. I just need to make sure that it's not going to get any tape wound up in it, so we'll have to make sure it's nice and clean, the pinch roller's not sticky, all that kind of stuff. So let's have a look at it. Another reason that I picked this particular one is because it runs on 230 volts. I didn't want to have to provide one where you need a step-down power transformer. You want it to work out of the box. If it doesn't have a UK plug on this, though, I'm going to swap it out for one of those. I don't know if it's like a Euro plug. I can't remember. Anyway, let's take a look in here. So the fact it's still got its original packaging is important, because it means I can just pop it back in that before I send it off. So there you go, and yeah, it does have a UK plug on it, so that's great. And now on the back here, you can see it's designed to connect up with like a lot of other equipment in this mini hi-fi system. I'm assuming you can just use it on its own. Well, at least I hope you can. We'll find out. But if I remember rightly, it might even have been one that just hadn't been used. It looks in very good condition. There are no marks on it at all. So it's like a slot loading cassette player, pretty much like one you'd get in a car, I suppose, the mechanism inside here. But as you can see, we've got Dolby on or off, so that'll be Dolby B, which is fine for any pre-recorded cassettes, well, vast majority of them. Auto reverse, which is great. Motorized eject. We can forget CD sync, because that's going to be connected with the other components in this particular system, but we do have a normal record if you wanted to record. Choose the direction of play, pause, stop, and auto music search as well, so we can skip to the next track. So really pretty much anything anyone would need if they were just playing back some normal cassettes. Okay, I've got my speakers plugged in, so just connect those up with the output on here, and we'll plug it in and see if it's got any life in it. Well, it made a noise then, so it's definitely getting power through to it. I'm going to risk it. We'll see if it'll play a tape. So, right, motorised loading. A little light comes on under there to show there's a cassette in, so you don't try and pop another one on top of it. Let's press play. Is anything happening? Not yet. Do I have to press that? Okay, it looks like we've got a project here, because my cassette is now stuck inside there. It won't play in either direction, it won't fast forward or rewind. Not a lot going on here at all. Okay, looks like I'm going to have to open that one up. Well, so much for this being a quick 5-minute job. I thought I was just going to have a look in here, clean it up and send it out, but it looks like there's a bit more going on than that. So let's get the cover off and find out what the problem is. Ooh. This is a little bit more complicated than I was expecting. Let's see if we can get this cassette out. Right, didn't want to give that up. Yeah, from now on I'm just going to use a blank cassette to test this with. And I have found a spring over there, which is not good. And it's attached to a piece of broken plastic. Oh dear. Now where the heck did that come from? Yeah, that spring really worries me, because obviously they don't put springs in things for fun. It does need it, and it was attached to a tiny little bit of broken plastic. And the thing is, I can't actually see any plastic in here. This is all metal, this mechanism, so I really do wonder where it came from. But yeah, very strange. Right, well let's try and put a cassette in again. Right, okay, so that's there. And then the question is, why doesn't it do anything after that? It's not even like you can take the bottom off this thing to have a good look at it. Everything is screwed to the bottom, so it's like a sandwich of components going downwards, and all I can see is the top of them. I wonder what's under this bit here. Oh, that's useless. Little circuit board. Cool. See if I can take the front off, maybe that'll reveal something. The belts are totally fine. Just put it down on a cloth so it doesn't contact with any electronics that it shouldn't be doing, and we'll try it again. Well, if it's any help, I've just realised what the spring will be for. It'll be for the door on the front there. It'll just be to keep it closed. So that's not such a big deal. We can live without that. Alright, so here's where we're up to. There doesn't seem to be anything wrong with this part here. And this is obviously the cassette mech. The belts are fine. It's loading the cassette fine. But after that, it's not taking any information, any instructions from these buttons on the front. Which then makes you think, is there a connection problem? It's quite possible that that's all it is, because it's a mechanism that's like soft touch controls. The eject is electronic, it's not a physical one, so it'll take it in automatically at the beginning, but everything after that relies on these buttons on the front operating the mechanism. So what I think I'll do, I'll just pull out all these ribbons and put them back in again. Maybe spray a bit of contact cleaner in there first and see if that does anything. I'm normally reluctant to take these things out because they're so easy to damage, but in this case, if they're not working, might as well give it a go. And hopefully we start to see some action. This would have been the perfect one to send if I could have got it working. I mean, you'd think one of these buttons would do something. Clearly there is some kind of connection going on, because we've got this red light lit up here, that green light there. Occasionally, if I play around with it enough, the pause light over here will flash. So it's doing something. There's a connection between the two things, but it's there we go, there's the pause light. So there is something going through that wire there, it's just not doing anything else. I've got to wonder if it's something else now. Now the only other thing I can think of is at the back here, I don't know if you can see there's like 4 connectors there. That's because once there's a cassette in here, there's a little micro switch there that tells it there's a cassette in place, and then the rest of the system works. And the way it works, the way it's acting at the moment, it's almost as though there isn't a cassette in there. So let's switch it on again, pop a cassette in, If I hold it against that switch on the back, let's see if that does anything. No. Connecting these two halves here would have achieved something, because it would have done the equivalent of what the switch is doing on the inside, and then I would have been able to eject. I mean, the fact I can't even eject really made you think as though the device thinks there's no cassette in place. I think the next thing I want to do is just have a look underneath this. If we take this circuit board out, see if there's any problems on the other side of here. I mean, I can't imagine there would be. Well, that turned out to be a colossal waste of time. I spent all the afternoon and into the evening on that, perhaps 4 or 5 hours, having a good look at every last part of it. The mechanics seemed absolutely fine on it. The only sign of something being a little bit amiss was on the sort of transformer area. There was like a rusty line down it, but like a lightning bolt on the outside. It looked like something catastrophic had happened. I'm not sure, but whenever I tried to press any kind of button which would have drawn some power, it just shut off. The whole thing shut down, and then you could start it up again, but anytime you wanted to do anything, nothing had happened. But you've got to remember, this thing probably cost me £14.99 many years ago. I just assumed it would have worked. It didn't, and I can spend hours and hours trying to get it to work and never get anywhere, or just call it off as a bad job. So that's what I've chosen to do. I've gone to to my locker this morning, and I've gone and found another machine which I bought not too long ago, a cassette deck, and I really thought this, well, I saw it on a Japanese auction. I was buying a few other things. I thought, oh, that looks interesting, never seen one of those before, and it's not that interesting, so that's why it's sat in there. It's an Onkyo K05. It's a slide-up loading deck, and that was the thing that intrigued me about this slide-up loading mechanism, because it's not a slot loader, it's not like a drawer loader, it's not a door loader. It's its own weird kind of loading mechanism, but that does not make enough for a video, does it? I mean, how boring is that? Just say, look, it ejects a little bit different. No one cares about that. But since we're here, you can have a look at it. We'll get the opportunity to have a look. We'll have a look inside as well, just check it's all right, this one. And hopefully this one's going to work. Now, the trouble is, with this one coming from Japan, it's running on 100 volts. So I'm going to have to use it with a step-down transformer. So let's just plug that into there. We'll plug it into these speakers here. It's just got the usual inputs and outputs on the back. Now, if this works and I send it off, one thing I'll do is label these up in English, because not everyone will be able to see that that's play, that's record, that's left, and that's right. So it's a lot easier if I just put some stickers on them. There's a comically short power lead on here, but of course that's because this component is supposed to be stacked with a load of others, and they'd all be plugged into the power sockets on the back of each other, sort of daisy chained, and then one of the components would have a decent length power lead on. That would be the one that goes to the wall. You can see some of the writing on the front here is a little bit worn. I don't know if that's something to do with the way the mechanism works, and it's rubbed the lettering off. Dolby BC and HX Pro. We've got a real-time counter, so that'll be hours, minutes and seconds, which is pretty cool. Tape in, so there's a light there which would indicate once you've got a tape inside here. And of course auto reverse, and that's open and closed there. But also I'll just push this one here. Behind this flap we've got some other controls. Reset, tape size. Now tape size no doubt is to get the real-time tape counter to show the right thing. You'd set it to say a 90-minute cassette, and then it would know where it was based on how much had passed over the playheads or whatever. But record, pause, auto space, and search. So we've got track search there, we've got Dolby noise reduction, and our different auto reverse modes there. So yeah, nice deck really, but let's just do its pièce de résistance. That was it. You can see why I didn't do a video about this. It's not exactly all that exciting, but here's how it works. So you put your cassette in like that. So I think the idea with this is it wants to play the cassette that way inside the machine. Now the thinking behind that would be cassettes are best played vertically. Now I can't vouch for that, because of course the original compact cassette decks from Philips, they all played them horizontally, flat like that. So I think you can see inside here how the pinch rollers are either side. We've got the play, record, rotating head, we've got the erase head to its side on the left, and they're all lined up with the thing to be played vertically. So once a cassette goes in here, it just plays it like a normal vertical cassette player. So let's find out if it plays it. Okay, now the first thing I've noticed there is that the cassette starts playing as soon as it's inserted. A little bit like a car stereo, I suppose. You just pop your cassette in and you'll see this forward light flashing over here, and in a couple of seconds it just starts playing the tape. Of course you can stop it and play it manually as well, but I just thought that's an interesting feature. You don't tend to get decks that do that. But another thing, the audio is shifting over to the right. It just keeps shifting to the right like that, but because it's kind of regular like that, it makes me feel that there's something in here that needs cleaning perhaps. So we definitely need to get in there and have a good look at that. It looked a bit dusty inside here. Hopefully we can get that fixed, because it is actually playing, so that's a big step up from the other one. Yeah, now you won't be able to hear this audio jumping to the right every couple of seconds because you're listening through a mono lavalier mic at the moment, but I can certainly determine that, so that definitely needs sorting out. Let's try playing it in the other direction. Yeah, now that way we don't have an issue. It's staying dead centre, so it's just in that direction. Yeah, so there's some kind of alignment issue. That's one of the problems with these auto-reverse mechanisms, where the head spins around. I mean, it might just have got some gunk on it or something that's keeping it from going perfectly straight, so maybe it's a simple matter of just cleaning it a little bit. Now, this display is a little bit difficult to see with all these lights on. Let me just dim things down a bit. Yeah, so it's what I suspected. You set the cassette length at the top there, so a C46, a 50, a 54, a 60, 70, 80, 90 and a 120. So they've got pretty much most of them covered there, the ones that you'd want to use anyway. So of course I don't suppose it really matters when you're dealing with a pre-recorded cassette, but when you put your blanks in and you want to see exactly how long remains, no doubt this will show the remaining time. Yeah, there we go. So that's the idea of it. You're recording on your tape, you want to see how much tape you've got left, you set your tape size in there. So nice little feature. Yeah, so this is your fast forward and rewind up here. But then this is your track search down at the bottom there. Everything seems really responsive. I was just about to record you some of the audio so you could hear how it moves to one side every now and then, but it's actually just stopped doing it, so that's a positive. But it obviously needs some kind of clean inside here, so we're still going to take the lid off and have a look. I wonder if these stickers on the front mean anything. You know, like a circle that's pink and a half circle that's green. I kind of imagine this has come out of some second-hand shop, perhaps a hard off or something, and they've got a code that indicates whether things should be discounted or not. Right, let's take a look inside. When do you think that's from? There's a thing on the transformer here, it says 1088, so perhaps it is October 88. You can see a sticker on the motor, that'd help. Ah, there's one. 7th of August 9056. Actually, that might be an S6 at the end. Yeah, S6. So 7th of August 90, it says on that motor there. So it is a belt drive, but it's really quite a nice system. We've got this big flat belt here going over that flywheel. Under that flywheel on the left, around it, over the top, across the top there, over to the motor on the right, and then out and back round again. So pretty solid setup, that. Another little belt down the side there, that's for the loading mechanism. If I press play, you'll be able to see them both spinning around. And then if I choose to play in the other direction, of course they don't stop. It's just the mechanism itself inside changes the direction that moves the tape. The flywheels keep spinning the same way all the time. And I'd imagine that this thing's going to have really good wow and flutter. With two big heavy metal flywheels like that, surely it's going to do something to keep the tape speed constant. Now, even a clueless buffoon like myself is able to determine what some of these components are for because they've been neatly labelled. For example, these two pots here, those are to adjust the playback level, those two are for the record level, and these two are for the bias. Of course, I'm not going to adjust any of these, but it's nice to know where they are if you needed to. So you can see how the tape drops down and then hinges up to the mechanism there. They must have decided that this would give better results than if you were just to do it in some other way. So I suspect that this thing's been built with performance in mind. Despite the fact it's a small deck, it looks like they've gone all out to try and get it to perform as well as they could. Yes, I've got some pretty good access down here. I can get to the head very easily. You can even get through the door a little bit if you need to. I'll start off by blowing the dust away. Right, so that's all in my lungs now rather than inside the machine, so we can move on. You'll notice on the top here we've got the full range of cassette sensors, record tab, chrome and metal tape, although in this case I don't think we're going to be doing any recording on this one, it's just going to be used for playback. Right, so I'm just using some isopropyl alcohol on here, just making sure that there's nothing left on that head. It doesn't look too bad. Yeah, nothing really coming up on the cotton bud there. Now I wonder if there's a way to fool this thing into playing, because I really could do with cleaning those rubber rollers, but it's a lot easier if they're actually moving. So, okay, let's have a go. Let's press play. Right, so what's the one that's going to determine there's a tape in there? Is it going to be that one? Yeah. Right, so I should be able to reach down here now and just rub this against the rubber roller. And now to clean the other one, I just need to play it in the other direction. So that looks really nice and clean inside there to me now, and the rotating play and erase head doesn't wobble. It seems to be located in the right position, so maybe it was just some issues with it not having been used for a while initially, but it seems to be fine now. The only thing I would suggest is that perhaps these pinch rollers could do with replacing sooner rather than later. They're looking a little bit cracked, and it doesn't look like it's too big a job just to unclip them and replace them with some new ones, but they'll be fine for the moment. One thing I want to show you though, this top section here, notice how it hinges up and down as the cassette comes in and out. And that's because it's linked to the sensors on the top here for the cassette. So the cassette comes in, it lifts it out of the way and then pops it down on top of the cassette. To go to all this trouble to make this loading mechanism up, they must have really been convinced that it was beneficial to play the cassette vertically rather than horizontally, because a lot of these other devices like this, they just slide the cassette in a tray and play it that way. But maybe they just wanted to adapt one of their existing mechanisms to a more compact case. But whatever the reason, it's all been done very nicely. Let's put the lid back on though and do some tests.
By the way, notice that the sound cuts off when you're running at anything other than normal speed.
Right, so here are the results. We've got both of these meters set to show 1% at the top of the scale, and if we look at the left-hand side first, that's the drift, the variance from the correct speed. 0B in the middle, 1% slow on the left, 1% fast on the right. So you can see it's running around about 0.6% fast. And that really isn't of any concern to me, but if it was to somebody else, they could open up the machine, adjust the screw on the motor, and try and get that speed more back towards the centre. But I'd suggest that it's not worth bothering, as I find that over the course of playing a tape, the speed will tend to vary a little bit and may well drift back towards the centre on its own. Now moving over to the right hand side here, the wow and flutter, well, it's barely showing anything, so I'm moving the scale to 0.3% at the top. So that's the bottom row we're looking at now. So you can see it's scoring around 0.06 to 0.07% wow and flutter. So that's a really good result. Well, everything worked out in the end there. I know this has been a bit of an unusual video. I wasn't planning for it to be this long. I was just going to have a look at that original Sony deck, clean it up, make sure it worked, and sent it off to Anders' friend. However, he's going to end up with a nicer deck than that original one. That one would have been fine if it had worked, but this is a better quality machine all round. The reason I was shooting that original one was just because I'd had it sat in my attic for ages. I'd never had a look at it, and it seemed silly to have something in my possession that I was going to pass on to someone else and never show in a video. So that was the whole reason behind that one. And then I thought, well, maybe we could repair it and get it working, so it kind of could turn into a repair video. And then that didn't work out. So now we move on to this one. It turns out this is a really nice deck, and it's nice to be able to showcase it, because I don't think very many people will have seen one of these before. I certainly hadn't, and the whole reason I bought it was because I'd never seen anything that said slide up loading on the front, and my curiosity got the better of me. As it was, there wasn't enough to base a video around that loading mechanism, but I suppose if you add that to the Sony model, that had a slot loader, this had slide up loading. They're both kind of unusual loading mechanisms for home hi-fi decks. The slot loader, of course, you see a lot in car stereos, or you did, and you did see it in some micro systems, so that wasn't particularly all that uncommon. But this one, I've never seen anything use a mechanism like this before, and seems a little bit extravagant, but I've got to say the results are good. The quality of this thing is absolutely excellent. Needed very little attention at all, this, and it'll be an excellent thing for someone to cherish. For myself, it was just going to sit on a shelf gathering dust, which would have been a shame. I'd much rather it went to someone who's going to be getting some use out of it. Now, I don't want this video to turn into something where people say, oh, please send me a cassette deck, because I've got a warehouse full of hundreds of these things. No, this was the last one that I could have sent on to anyone. After this, if this hadn't worked, I don't know what I would have done, because the other models that I've got various reasons for each one being in my possession. Either it's something that I use regularly, something that makes appearances in videos quite often, or it's something that I'm planning on showing in a future video. This was just surplus to requirements, so it's nice that it's going to go on to someone who's going to get some use out of it. But anyway, I hope you've enjoyed watching this rather unusual video. If you haven't, sorry, no refunds, but that's it for the moment. As always, thanks for watching.